Being in our feminine energy is actually quite vulnerable because it means to be in our hearts. It means to be open. And that comes with the risk of being hurt. But if you are in full devotion to love, to truth, you are here to live the highest expression of love, even if that comes with the risk of being hurt. Welcome to the Deeper Please podcast. I'm Eliza, dating and intimacy coach, Mexican medicine woman, and feminine and masculine energy expert. I personally believe that we humans get to self-actualize through the path of opening our hearts. So this podcast has been designed for you to peel back the layers and discover who you get to be as an open-hearted human in this lifetime. I will be sharing with you heart-expanding and mind-bending tools and concepts for you to create deeper and more fulfilling conscious relationships with yourself and with the world around you. So with that said, open your heart, turn the volume up, and let's go deeper. Oh my gosh, we are here. We are here, you guys. I cannot believe it. And also at the same time, I've been waiting for this moment, like what it feels like my entire life. We are here. Welcome to episode 1 of the Deeper Please podcast. Wow, thank you so much for being here, tuning in with me. At the moment of recording this first episode, I wish you could have an idea of what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling so many emotions. My insides are vibrating. And it's crazy. I'm in the living room of my home. I'm watching my dog play with her bone right now, and I have all of these emotions like, wow, I've been wanting to do this for quite a bit. It's been a while and finally pulled the trigger. So I am very grateful that you're here. This is episode 1 of season 1. Our season 1 is obviously dedicated to the divine feminine. And I say obviously because if you have been here for a while, I mean, not here in the podcast, this is just episode 1, but in my world, if you have been in my world for a while, you know that this is at the very core and base of my body of work, the feminine energy. However, if you are new to my world, don't be fooled that this is just like, oh, another feminine energy coach or just another episode about feminine energy. I dare to say that I have very unique views around feminine and masculine energies. It's like one of my favorite topics to talk about in the world. I have a ton of personal experience with working with clients. So hang on. If this is your first time listening to me or watching me, welcome to my world. Keep your mind open, your heart open, and yeah, let's do it, shall we? So episode 1 is all about redefining feminine energy. I wanted to begin with this because I believe there is like so many misconceptions around feminine energy. The intention of this episode is that really I want you to feel that you're being given permission to be more you, to be more in your authentic expression of feminine energy. Not that you need the permission, but sometimes it's really helpful to get a perspective or realize that it is not necessary to put ourselves in a box. And that is like something that I wish I had known before at the beginning of my journey with feminine energy, which I will tell the whole journey, the whole detail in another episode. But something that really happened to me and that I see a lot in women who are just beginning this journey or even years into the journey, there are so many ideas that put feminine expression into a box. into like a label, and here is what we should look like, and this is what feminine energy should feel like and look like, and if you are not in these labels and boxes, then you are not in your feminine. And oh my gosh, like, can we please just like relax? Any part of the healing journey, and right now focusing on the feminine expression, please don't use that to put yourself into a box. Don't use that to label yourself. Anything that feels limiting to your own authenticity and your own expression, please find a different perspective, find a different way, right? Because the point is not like anything that makes us feel less than or that we're wrong, like, is not expanding us, right? So for me, that is one of my biggest intentions with this episode, that you feel expanded, that you feel more liberated and free with the concepts that we're going to explore and the definitions around feminine energy, okay? So traditionally, culturally, we receive kind of like this same thread around feminine energy, right? Like culturally, feminine energy is like, oh yeah, at least this is like the messages that I got growing up, like be nice, be pretty, be all well put together, like behave, don't make too much noise, don't be too much, don't take up too much space, right? Maybe you resonate with parts of this or all of it. And at the same time, I received so much like mixed signals, because I remember my mom saying to me when I was a child, like, be sure that you study and grow up and get a good job and make your own money and be independent so you don't have to depend on a man, right? So this for me was like kind of a lot of like mixed signals. It's like be nice, be pretty and be quiet, but also work hard and be independent, and so you don't need a man, and so you're not depending on a man. And I mean, I see the good intention and I see the good points in it, but also it was like this kind of like mixed signals, right? And it was also very different from what I was seeing in what I was actually watching in my household. So, wow, right? Like, my point with this is to point out how we receive so many different mixed signals, right? Growing up. So, no wonder then we are adults and we're like, oh, I'm supposed to be feminine in my relationship. I'm supposed to be feminine in my business. I'm supposed to be feminine in with men in my dating life. What the heck does that even mean, right? And then add up to that, like the self-help world, right? Like the personal development world, which obviously I'm in this world. I work in this environment, and I love it. However, again, there are so many ideas that I believe that are really very limiting. So one of the main limiting ideas that I want to really bust here, we're gonna go right into it now, is this, like, in the self-help world, we hear a lot about, well, if you want to be in your feminine, you just have to lean back and receive. Who has ever heard that? My gosh, like, I'm sure you're like nodding, right? Like, you're like, yeah, lean back and receive. So, and then, like, if you're not leaning back and receiving, you're not in your feminine. But this idea of being in your feminine it's all about like only leaning back and receiving, I believe creates so much confusion and even kind of like shadows for feminine beings. Quick caveat, when we're talking about feminine, this is not about genders. This is not about like only women. It's any feminine being. And caveat inside of the caveat that we all have feminine energy, right? Even if you are a masculine being. But this phrase of just lean back and receive, I remember at the beginning of my journey with entrepreneurship, and I bump into like feminine and masculine energy concepts, right? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is this? Oh yeah, of course. It's like a breath of fresh air when we find this, especially those of us who have been in such a survival mode for most of our lives, and we have been operating in such like hyper toxic masculine energy, just out of survival, right? So when we find feminine energy and it turns out to be something about like flow and relaxing and surrendering and leaning back and receiving, wow, it feels like the oasis, right? In the middle of the desert. It's like, wow, yes. However, being in this mindset of just leaning back and receiving can create quite a bit of confusion around like how we get to show up, for example, in our businesses. It's like in our business, we need to get shit done. If you're only leaning back and receiving and like expecting to receive everything, right, with just like by leaning back, by not doing anything, like how is that gonna work, right? So I remember like even, and this is something that I observe so much in my clients, in women that come to me with this mindset of like, I just want to be able to relax and lean back and not do too much. And this creates patterns that are really not helpful. Here is where the toxic pattern comes in, for lack of a better word, more like the dysfunctional pattern or the coping mechanism, better said. We start to use this idea of like, I should be in my feminine, so I'm going to lean back because I want to be in my feminine, but we use that as an excuse when we are scared of taking the scary action, of taking like when we know that the next step is something that is like it's getting us out of the comfort zone, and then we start using that as a like, oh well, I want to be in my feminine, so I'm just gonna lean back and relax, and if it doesn't feel good, this is another thing that we hear a lot for the feminine in business especially, it has to feel really good. It has to feel really good. Otherwise, don't do it, because that's not, if you have to force it, you are not in your feminine. However, yeah, of course, it has to feel good in terms of alignment, but sometimes the aligned thing is very freaking uncomfortable. It's very scary. It's very like, because it's getting us out of our comfort zone, right? So there is, we like consciously or subconsciously, for me, it was a lot of subconscious confusion with this in my business. Like, I want to be in my feminine, so I'm just going to lean back and receive. And I use that to avoid doing the freaking work, getting shit done, right? Also, for example, in terms of like relationship, this idea of leaning back and receiving in relationship can also be very, very harmful, because I hear women say like, well, he has to be the leader and I'm just going to follow. I'm going to lean back. And yes, it is very important to give the masculine the space to be the leader and the masculine. However, you also get to, like, as the feminine, I really believe that we are the leaders in terms of the matters of the heart, because the feminine is way more connected to the heart. The masculine is more head, is more logic, more rational, which is beautiful. And we love the masculine. We love masculine energy over here. We love the masculine, and we love men and everything that has to do with the masculine, right? But the feminine is more about the heart. The feminine is more connected about emotion. The feminine is more about feeling. So in relationships, sometimes we get to step up in that way, and it's not about telling the man what to do or telling the masculine what to do, but we get to lead by modeling, by being in our hearts, by being in our feelings, by expressing our feelings. That's how we lead. It's a subtle feminine leadership, right? I'm very excited to create a whole episode on feminine energy in relationships, right? But that's what I'll say for now around this. Now, Another misconception is that the feminine is kind of like what I was saying at the beginning of this conversation, is that it's just like in one box, right? Like just like one label. So for example, some coaches or teachers, facilitators portray the feminine as just like the sensual part. And I get it. We all have a side of the feminine that is more comfortable for us, or maybe we came such a long way healing that part of ourselves that then when we find the liberation, we are like so focused on it. We're like, yes, this is what changed my life. And for example, for me, healing my sexuality, like this is what changed my life, and now I want to teach everyone to have a healthy relationship with their sexuality and with their pussy, and I want to teach everyone to have amazing orgasms. And I was showing up as a very openly sexual person in my business. This was a stage of my business. If you have been here long enough, you know what I'm talking about, and it's beautiful. And I get that we all have a part or a side of the feminine that we get to teach or embody and model, right? And we like, so some women are very much in their like they feel a lot more connected to the mystic side of the feminine, or another, like there are brands around the wild feminine, right? And it's all very beautiful. However, where I see this is like kind of limiting is in believing that the feminine is only one side, only one thing, right? Like I really kind of like pulled away from portraying my brand and such around sensuality and sexuality like I did for a while, because I realized that that's not all of it, right? Like the more I integrated my feminine energy, the more I came to this like integration and wholeness around the feminine, like realizing that there is, the sensual and the sexual part, and also there is this like other sides, like the mystic or the wild or the witchy and the dark feminine even. So with that, I just want you to have that kind of permission, like I said, or that freedom to be like, actually, like all of it is feminine. All of you is feminine. It's not only about being soft and pretty, not only about being in surrender and flow, or not only about being wild or sexy, or it's all of it, right? So what is truly feminine energy, right? So the way I would describe it in my own words, and the best way I understand feminine energy, I embody feminine energy, is depth and range, right? Just, I want to give you this analogy. The most beautiful, it's not even an analogy, it's like the most beautiful example of feminine energy. Right now I'm looking through my big window here in my living room, and I'm looking at nature. Beautiful, huge trees. I'm just a moment ago, there is these little animals, I don't know the name in English, but they live in this like beautiful tree right outside of my balcony that I'm looking at right now. And nature, that is the feminine. So if you look at nature is not always pretty and well put together. Not long ago, I live in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. This is the tropics. Not long ago, there was a hurricane passing here about maybe 3 weeks ago or a month ago, I don't know. So have you ever been or watched on the news or on a video like what it's like a hurricane, right? It's like, that's nature, that is the feminine, right? Like it can be so chaotic, it can be so unpredictable. Even at this time when we can predict hurricanes, there is people, like they're saying like, now it's category 3, and then the next moment is like, no, now it's category 5, and then no, it's down to category 1, and it's like even this at this time that we can predict so much of nature, still, it's so unpredictable. So that is the feminine. That's the example that I have for you. So it can be very chaotic, very unpredictable. And how it shows up in a person, your feminine side, your feminine energy is all connected to emotions, to feelings, right? Like if you emotions are like that, right? They can be very like light and beautiful, and like when you're feeling this side of the spectrum that has you like almost on cloud nine, right? And then there are these other sides of emotion, right? Like the sadness, the grief, the anger. Like, not long ago I went through a very deep heartbreak recently, right? And it's very recent for me. It's kind of fresh, and now I'm on the other side of it, definitely. But it's very recent, right? Like if I only look back at like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, for me, I was still like processing layers of grief. And if you have really allowed yourself to process grief in a way where you actually go into it, you know what I'm talking about, right? And if you haven't, I highly recommend you. There is so much healing in learning to process our deepest emotions, our heavy emotions. I mean, there is so much healing and power in learning to embrace every single one of our emotions, right? Not only the heavy ones, but all of them. So, yeah, emotional capacity, emotional processing, emotional intelligence, and emotional availability are all concepts that I talk a lot about. So, if you're new here, you're going to hear me talk a lot about this. So, that is what feminine is for me. Depth and range is chaotic, it's darkness, it's light, it's unpredictability, it's chaos, it's flow, it's sensuality, it's carefree, it's nurturing, all of that and more. Here is something like another little thing that I want to bust around this. So you may be wondering, where is the surrendering part? Where is the, like everyone talks about the feminine is surrender and flow and trust, right? And here's how I see it. So what I just described a moment ago is these are the characteristics of the feminine, right? Like how the feminine, what parts of ourselves are feminine energy, right? Emotion, feelings, sensuality, chaos, unpredictability, feelings, right? Now, when your feminine energy is free to be expressed, to be authentic, to be herself, when you learn to embrace all of these parts of yourself, right? Like when you can actually be in all of your emotions, in your sensuality, in your carefreeness, in your playfulness, and also in your grief and in the heaviness, in the anger, when you can actually cultivate that safety to be all of you, that creates that beautiful expression of the feminine that comes to surrender, that comes to trust. The trust and the surrender, the submission, the devotion are forms of expression of the feminine when she feels safe to be all of herself. So that means that if you fully embrace all of you, if you fully embrace actually your own unique blueprint of the feminine, because it's like we all have our own unique signature and flavor, right? I think the fuck up comes when we try to put ourselves into a different blueprint, a different template of someone else, right? So, but if you can actually embrace your unique blueprint without boxing yourself, that safety to be authentic, to be yourself, that is when the feminine actually relaxes and surrenders and trusts life and receives, and it opens up and is in full devotion. So that is the full expression of the feminine. So the reason I'm really clarifying this is like I never heard anyone talk about feminine energy like this, and I'm really bringing it to you, and I really want to anchor it because I hear so much this very kind of like harmful or toxic idea that if I'm not surrendering, I'm not in my feminine. Let's please ditch that. Don't ever say that again. It's like, if I'm not surrender, I'm not in my feminine. If I'm not trusting, I'm not in my feminine. If I'm not receiving, I'm not in my feminine. So these are byproducts. These are results of the safety that you have in your body to be all that you are. So the surrender, the trust, and the receiving come when you create that safety and when you can be all of you. And those are forms of expression that your feminine will express herself. And the moments where you are not able to surrender, when you are not able to trust, when you are like, it just means it's information, and it means that you are in survival patterns, and that is where the growth and the personal development and the work comes for us, right? Not because we want to fit into a mold about being more feminine, but because we're here to have a freaking good time. That's it. Nothing to prove. We are here to have a good time. Right? So this is very unique to my work. This is a concept and a definition that I personally discovered in my own journey. Nobody ever told me this, and that's something that I will always take pride for, that the things that I teach you are things that I really embodied in my own journey and discovered in my own journey. And I'm giving you the shortcuts, right? I'm not giving you something that I read in a book or something. Like, I've read very few books around feminine and masculine energy. I less than 5. I can't even count 4 right now. So my point with that is because sometimes people come to me and they're like, oh, what books do you recommend to heal my feminine and masculine energy? And I'm like, everything that I learned was with real life in the arena, healing, coaching, somatic work, mentorship, hours and hours of programs, and hours of really doing the freaking work, right? Like the breath work, meditations, and all of the things, all of the tools, all of the things. Anyways, tangent right there. But this is the definition that I really want you to, that I want to bring to you, that I believe is very unique and that I encountered in my own journey. The full expression of the feminine, one trait that not many people talk about the feminine, is devotion. To me, that is like the biggest superpower of the feminine, devotion. Because devotion is encapsulates this expression when the feminine is fully safe to be in her full expression. Devotion is when she is in full trust with life, with God, with herself. Devotion is when she is in surrender. Devotion happens when when the feminine is in submission to life. And I get submission can be a little bit a triggering word for some people, and I'm okay with that. I trust that you will explore what comes up for you. But why devotion is such an important pillar in my body of work? Because to me, this is like the superpower and the inner force that the feminine can bring from herself. Some people say that devotion is masculine. I completely disagree. The masculine expression of devotion is more commitment. When the masculine is in his full healthy expression, he's committed and he is like boom boom boom, like I'm committed and I honor what I say and I honor what I like. Oh, it's so beautiful, right? But like the feminine expression of this is devotion. And my journey with this has been so beautiful, because I feel like when the feminine is in full trust and surrender, like if she can have that foundational safety to be in her full expression, she will be so devoted, and there is nothing, no other force that compares to devotion. And we as feminine beings have this superpower that when we bring it to our relationships, to our businesses, to our friendships, to ourselves, especially to our relationship with God, our relationship with our divine purpose, our relationship with truth, consciousness, it's so powerful. It's so beautiful. Now, what does it mean to honor feminine energy in a romantic relationship? As I said, I'm gonna make a whole episode around this because we could talk about this for hours. But in a nutshell, being in your feminine in a romantic relationship is really being in your heart. Actually, any kind of relationship is being in your heart, is being in your feelings, is being in your emotions, is being vulnerable, is being open, is being in devotion to truth. And there is so much information out there that, yeah, if you want to be feminine in your relationship, you have to do this and you have to do that. Like you let him lead and he has to pursue you and he has to blah, blah, blah. It's like at the end of the day, the practicalities can look in many different ways. That's the way I see it. But what really matters is the energy where you're coming from. And if you are coming from your heart, if you're really coming from openness, if you're coming from vulnerability, if you're coming from that like authentic truth of what is in your heart and in service of love, in service to truth and highest consciousness, that is when you are in your feminine. We can learn about practicalities and tips all that we want, but it all comes down to being in your heart. This means that you show up in a relationship really like being in your true feelings. You're not playing games. You express what is in your heart, and here is why for so many it's so hard to be in their feminine, because being in our feminine energy is actually quite vulnerable. Being in our feminine in life, in relationships, is vulnerable because it means to be in our hearts. It means to be open. And that comes with the risk of being hurt. But if you are in full devotion to love, to truth, you are here to live the highest expression of love, even if that comes with the risk of being hurt. Because you prefer the risk of heartbreak than the risk of not living your fullest expression of love. So the ways we dishonor being in our feminine or dishonor our feminine energy in relationships is really when we show up in our heads, when we avoid vulnerability, when we try to be like our men or try to be the masculine or try to like overpower our men, right? When we try to take this role of the masculine, oh my gosh, been there, done that. So many relationships in my past, I was always in this role of like taking the lead, always being the one that planned the things and not giving space to my male partners to be in their masculine, right? Because I was like always like in this hyper control. now I know better, right? At the end of the day, when we show up from this energy of being in our heads and not being vulnerable and trying to control our men, it's all comes down to ways where we want to take control, right? And control means survival, right? If you're a man and you're listening and you want to know how to honor the feminine in a relationship, stay tuned because I'm going to make a whole episode around this for you. And ladies, stay tuned because you want to send that episode to your men. I promise it will do a lot of good in your relationship. Okay, and what does it mean now? What does it mean to honor your feminine energy in business? Now, business is an area of our lives that requires a good amount of masculine energy. And I'm all about masculine energy as feminine beings. I have a whole free masterclass around how healing masculine energy as a feminine being. We're gonna drop the link in the show notes. I truly believe that this is a huge part of being in our feminine. This is probably a quite unpopular angle, that to be in deeper feminine, we need to heal our masculine, right? So what I really wanted to say about this is that in business, we require a lot of masculine energy, and it's probably one of the areas where it's the hardest to be in our feminine, right? To honor our feminine. So there is nothing wrong with being in your masculine. Some days you really need to get shit done, and some days you really need to be in your leadership, and you need to be leading your team, and you need to be like in this mode. Beautiful. Perfect. Masculine energy is so needed. We need that, right? But also for me, being in my honoring my feminine in my business is really like planning things around my cycle, right? Like planning things that the week leading up to my cycle when I'm in deep luteal, clear the schedule, it's like being more gentle with myself. It's understanding that I'm a cyclical being, that I cannot operate like a masculine, like a male body, right? So it's being like really in that authenticity of what is true for me, instead of doing the things that I think I should be doing, right? What is really true in my heart? What is the message that I know that I'm here to share? What is my connection to a higher force, to God? What is my devotion? The devotion that I bring to my business, to my purpose, to my clients, to God. That is for me the way I express the feminine as a baseline in my business, right? So another part for your business that I love about the feminine is that we have this, is being in your oracle, is being in trust with your intuition. Like you get the download, you get the signs, and you're like, yes, I'm going for it, and I'm trusting that inner guidance, that divine guidance, that heart guidance, because that is the superpower of your feminine. If you want to do everything from your head, I mean, be my guest, but men do that. Like men do business from their head and logic and rationally. Amazing, they're masculine beings and that works for them. But if we have this superpower called intuition, if we are divine oracles, if we can be so connected to the divine and to our hearts and to our emotions, why wouldn't we use this, right? Why wouldn't we? It's so powerful, so beautiful. And lastly, the last part of this episode, how to heal your feminine energy, how to embody deeper feminine energy. I already gave you like quite a bit of examples, but here is something that I want to say. The healing of the feminine energy, the journey, if you are on that journey, I see these two parallel sides, right? Like these two kind of like two sides to the journey and two roads that are parallel and equally important. One of them is connecting to your body, connecting to your yoni. Yoni is the Sanskrit word for pussy. So it's that journey of connecting to your sensuality, connecting to the body, connecting to your yoni, connecting, like that coming home to your female body, to your heart, to like, it's so it's beautiful. But that is just one part of it, and that's something that I wish I knew before, because if that is the only route to you to embody or to heal your feminine, you're missing a lot. Like then this is I'm gonna share my whole journey in another episode, but this is something that happened for me in my journey. It's like, okay, I'm connecting to my sensuality. Yes, I'm having all these sensual awakenings and all these amazing orgasms, and I'm so liberated in my sexuality. Amazing. And I still can't surrender. And I still can't feel that I fully trust life and God and men. Like, what's happening? What am I doing wrong? And that took me to this second part of the journey, which I believe they should be done parallel. There is no wrong way, obviously. Like, you can do one first, and then the other. But the second part of it is really the healing of the heart. The healing of the heart, this is when we heal our childhood wounds. This is where we heal our child feminine. This is where we heal the wounded feminine, the attachment. This is when we heal the relationship with the masculine, right? Because at the end of the day, all of the wounding that the feminine holds is very related to masculine energy, right? Like, most of it, 99% of it, is related to the masculine, because these are wounds that are created when we're like in our upbringing, right? And also a lot of it comes from society and our culture, right? But I really wanted to like point out to these two sides of the healing, because I feel like there is not a lot of clarity, and sometimes like I see women working a lot on like their hearts and processing trauma, processing healing attachment, healing the relationship with their masculine, but they're very disconnected from their body. They're very disconnected from their sensuality. They're very disconnected, like, and that's a part that they keep like kind of like hidden. And I see also the other side of the coin, right? Like women very openly sensual and sexual. However, they're not really paying attention to this, the healing of the heart and the attachment, the relationship with the masculine, all of these things. And also there is like kind of this disconnect. So I believe that in order to feel more in your fullness, in your wholeness. Again, this is not just because I want to be feminine. No, this is more because I want you to feel whole. That's the whole point of it, right? It's like for you to feel more whole, more integrated, is about merging these two roads. That's how I have lived it in my own journey, and I continue to work on this because there is always more layers, and it's beautiful and it's perfect, and that's what we came here for, to expand and to grow and to evolve, and it's amazing. And I hope that this episode really gave you some different insights, some perspective for your own journey. I really hope that there was something here. If that is the case, let me know, please. Like, I always love when people write to me and they say like, I loved your posts, or I love this class. Like, it always makes my day. I love connecting to you. My inbox is open. My social media is going to be down below in the show notes. So come and say hi to my inbox. Stay connected. Don't be a stranger. I love you so much. And see you in the next one. Mwah. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Deeper Please podcast. Don't forget to check the show notes for ways to go even deeper. Remember to share this episode with someone you love. And if you feel like sharing with me how this podcast is impacting your life and relationships, feel free to slide into my inbox at I am Eliza V on Instagram. Stay open, stay wild, and see you next time.